Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Afghanistan today for a surprise visit. That includes meetings with the Afghan government leaders. Now, this comes less than 24 hours after President Biden's announcement of the full withdrawal of U.S. troops from the country by September 11th of this year. Now, joining us now to break down these news developments and dynamics of this story that's been decades in the making is Larry Wilkerson. He's a retired U.S. Army colonel and also former chief of staff to Secretary of State Colin Powell. Thank you, Larry, for joining us. I would like to quote to you your former boss, who said in the Washington Post, "It's time to bring this to an end." And he referred to Soviet withdrawal in 1989 as another example, saying they did it the same way. They got tired and they marched out and back home. How long did anybody remember that? So my question for you, Larry, is are we going to be seeing those same Cold War chickens come home to roost once again?
I think the situation is as bad as it was, for example, when we left Vietnam for our military. That's not to say that it's not something President Biden should have decided on. It probably is, as my former boss indicated. But it will be very, very tough on the Afghan people, and probably very, very tough on the Afghan government if it can even hold on. So the detritus of America's wars is usually in the country where we fight them. We come home, breathe a sigh of relief, and we say, okay, it's over, and our soldiers will have to go back, and I welcome that as a former soldier. But the people that have to live with the burden of our exit are the people we invaded in the first place.
And that brings us to Secretary of State Blinken's visit to Afghanistan. The remarks by President Biden were very clearly directed to the American public, and some would even say that picking the 20-year anniversary of 9/11, which was an al-Qaeda attack on U.S. soil, is also a very American-facing message. So what can be told to the people of Afghanistan who have essentially suffered between one army or another for the last 20 years?
You just said it. Blinken is there to try and appease some people who, at least a portion of whom, are very furious. The announcement came probably with some consultations, but still it was a very public announcement, and it was to the American people, maybe to our allies to an extent, but it was basically to the West. Afghanistan has got to be handled by Secretary Blinken now, and I don't envy his task. They're going to be angry in many respects, and they're going to ask questions like, where do the talks go now? With whom do we continue to talk, and what's our pressure to bring upon them, and so forth? It's a very corrupt government. There's no question about that. That's probably the real problem in Afghanistan right now, is no legitimate government, not a real one anyway. So it's anybody's guess as to where it's going, but my guess is it will go to hell in a handbag, and it won't be very shortly after we depart completely.
And do you, given your experience and the value of hindsight, have any regrets, either as a former military man or as a diplomat?
Well, I have lots of regrets. Telling lies to the United Nations on February the 5th, 2003 about Iraq's weapons of mass destruction, torture, a torture program that the military, my Army joined in, a torture program approved at the highest levels in the land by the President of the United States, a first in American history. Yeah, I've got a lot of regrets, a heck of a lot of regrets. I wish I could go back and fix a few of them.
Well, knowing that this is the forever war, and for many it's been the forgotten war because they haven't necessarily had to serve themselves, what can you say the United States has gained in the last 20 years?
Not a lot. In fact, we've lost quite a bit. We have disturbed the situation with NATO, where Russia is now poised with over 80,000 troops with artillery and tanks in Crimea and Ukraine at the Donbass. We have essentially ruined the Middle East. It's in turmoil from one end to the other. And we are in a situation with China now where she has really taken over the power position in East Asia, certainly in the South China Sea. We're looking at Whitsun Reef right now, where there are all manner of Chinese ships assembling, Filipino ships assembling, and a U.S. Strike group in the vicinity. We are on the brink of several really bad possibilities right now.
And when you look at the makeup of our military, historically it's been an opportunity for communities of color. There are 43% of the 1.3 million men and women in active duty are people of color, but when it comes to the officer ranks, it drops down to the single digit. So again, from your military perspective, how would you correct for the challenge of diversity in leadership?
That's a very good question. It's something that Colin Powell and I and a number of people around us tracked very carefully when we were in the government and when we were in the military. The African Americans, blacks in the ranks, have been replaced not wholesalely but largely by Hispanics. In the Marine Corps in particular, the predominant majority or minority now is Hispanics. So, and you don't have any Hispanic officers to speak of. It's less than 3% the last time I looked, while the percentage of enlisted men is close to 50. So we're looking at some real problems, and as Powell has said a number of times, we've taken our eye off the ball. We should be making sure, call it affirmative action or what you call it. We should be making sure that these people are working up through the ranks to the promotion boards where they would have a chance to be a Colin Powell or to be the first 4-star Hispanic general or whatever. We just don't do this very well, and we've taken our eye off the ball with regard to minorities and officer corps to match them.
Appreciate your frank insights, Larry. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Sure. Let me say also that women now constitute about 23-24% of the force, and they don't constitute 23 or 24% of the generals.
Oh, I've noticed.
I bet you have.